Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu, and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at the Classic Collection, or EX01 for short, and well, the Classic Collection, even though it doesn't offer us that many new or meta-defining decks, it does add quite a few cards to make some new and exciting decks with still, and one of the premier decks, if not the premier deck, coming out of that set is going to be the Machine deck. And what I mean by Machine deck is it's basically a Machinedramon deck that is centered around Machine and Cyborg based synergies. So Machinedramon is looking to be a very powerful card, if not one of the most powerful cards that's coming out of the set, doing quite a lot to not only just keep himself around on the board, but make him really easy to play in the long game. So what the deck generally wants to do is just play this traditional style of the evolution in the early game, and then in the late game, you're just going to hard slam Machinedramon after Machinedramon, making it very hard for the opponent to deal with it, because Machinedramon also is going to have basically a slew of different abilities thanks to the toolboxing potential that the deck has. So I think this is going to be a very fun and very powerful deck to be playing around with as a result. So without further ado, onto the deck profile. I'm going to start off with the Digitama, as I always do, with 4 copies of Pagumon. So Pagumon is just the best generic Digitama that we have to be working with, because it has this nice inheritable ability of on delete, reveal the top card of our deck, and then add it into our hand if it's a black Digimon, otherwise it will go to the bottom of the deck. So that's pretty alright of an ability. It's the only one that's actually really doing something. You could just use some of the other Digitamas like Chikurimon or Chikurimon to just try to give yourself some extra DP, but those are more specific scenarios and you do need specific keywords to interact with it, and we're not always going to have that 100% of the time, so Pagumon just is the best Digitama to use generically by default. As far as the 5th Digitama of the deck goes, I'm actually not running a 5th Digitama just because the synergies are a little bit harder to specifically line up in the early game, and once we're into the mid to late stages of the game, then the Digitama becomes less and less useful, so I feel like for this style of deck, 4 Digitama is fine, but the 5th Digitama could really be anything you feel like you want to be using. Next, on to the rookies, I'm going to be running 4 copies of ToyAgumon. So ToyAgumon is a decent card just because he gives the inheritable ability of Reboot, allowing your Digimon to unsuspend during the opponent's unsuspend phase, making it a little bit harder for the opponents to respond with, and allowing your blockers to, well, block and aggress almost at the same time, making this just one of the best inheritable abilities to be playing around with. Next, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Chikurimon. So Chikurimon we're really only playing just because of the security ability. So the security ability of Digivolve 1 is just that good sometimes, and the fact that we have a Digimon that also has a security ability just makes it more playable. Half the time we're probably just going to end up Digivolving this and just trying to climb our stages, but the fact that it does have that possibility of being a security threat just makes it a really good card to be using. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Hagurumon. So Hagurumon from the Classic Collection is actually a pretty good card that has lots of good synergy with the deck. So what this card is doing is it has the nice on-play ability where you get to trash 1 Digimon card with Machine or Cyborg in its traits from your hand to draw 2 cards. So you're essentially replacing 1 card with 2 cards, you're filling up your trash, which Machinedramon does want to have some trash-based synergies, and that's allowing you to set up while fueling your hand, so that way you can consistently try to see the cards that you need to see to try to go up the evolutionary chains when you need to, or just be able to find the cards that you need to in order to respond to what the opponent's doing. So Hagurumon is a really fantastic card to be playing around with as a result. Next, on to the champions, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Numemon. So Numemon is just that value-efficient vanilla card. We're just looking to use this card almost like a pseudo-rookie, so if we don't have a rookie, then we could just hard slam a level 4 for 3, and that's all we're trying to gain out of the card. It does also evo for 1 in case we do have a rookie, then we could climb our stages relatively efficiently and easily with, but the only downside is it only has 3000 DP, but if we're trying to get off this card as quickly as we possibly can, that's not really that big of a deal because we're not actually using Numemon for, well, Numemon. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Tankmon. So Tankmon is another tempo efficiency card. We're really only looking to use the card for the fact that it just evos for 1, allowing us to climb the stages more efficiently and easily, but it also does have some synergy with the deck because it is also a cyborg, and if we do need to stop on Tankmon to try to aggress with, then we're not necessarily afraid to because it has 6000 DP, making it a little bit stronger than most of the other level 4s, making him just a good card to use for the deck. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Mekanorimon. So Mekanorimon is just an absolutely insane card to be running because it's one of the best blockers Black has access to. So what this card is doing is we're mostly going to be hard playing it for 4 just because evoing for 3 is a little bit expensive, and the fact that he has 6000 DP with the blocker ability, even though he won't be able to attack, he basically can wall out the opponent's low level Digimon as long as they're smaller than Mekanorimon because of his last ability where he gets to unsuspend himself every time he deletes an opponent's Digimon by battle and he survives. So anything that's basically weaker than him will basically just not be able to attack, otherwise the opponent's just going to be throwing it away, making Mekanorimon very, very powerful on top of the fact that it is also a machine, so it does have some machine-based synergies. And then the last champion of the deck is going to be Dark Tyrannomon. So Dark Tyrannomon is just another tempo efficiency card that also just so happens to be a blocker. So that's really the only reason why we're playing this, is just to kind of like have a wide toolbox of different cards that we could be using. And Dark Tyrannomon is just also fulfilling that blocker role while also fulfilling that tempo efficiency role. Next, onto the ultimates. I am going to be running a lot of Tech 1s and 2-ofs for our ultimate slots just because of how Machinedramon wants to work, where we're really only caring about the fact that they are all cyborgs and they all have a really good inheritable ability for Machinedramon to take advantage of. So I'm going to be running 1 copy of Gigadramon, just because he has a nice inheritable ability where during the opponent's turn, this Digimon gets plus 2000 DP, making it a little bit harder for the opponent to interact with because of this DP boost. Next, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Volcanomon, just because, well, again, he's another cyborg with a solid inheritable ability. So his inheritable ability states that during your turn, while the opponent has an unsuspended Digimon in play, then this Digimon gains security tech +1, allowing our Machinedramon to hit the opponent relatively harder than he normally would. So it allows us to deal some extra damage rather than try to take a long game chip type approach. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Andromon. So Andromon is a really good card because if we need to use him in the early to mid stages of the game, his native ability of when digivolving, revealing the top 3 cards of our deck to add 1 level 6 with machine and its type among them into our hand and then trash the rest is really good because obviously it's trying to dig out our Machinedramon, so that way we could try to get into Machinedramon as efficiently as we possibly can and as consistently as we possibly can. And then on top of that, like I said, he's another cyborg that we really care about more so for his inheritable ability, because his inheritable ability states that during the opponent's turn, while this Digimon has machine in its type, it also gains the blocker ability. So we could pair this up with some of our other abilities to make a very powerfully defensive Machinedramon stack. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Metal Tyrannomon. So Metal Tyrannomon is another card that's from the classic collection like Andromon, and this card is doing a very similar thing where its native ability is exactly the same thing. We're just digging for our Machinedramons while trying to fill up our trash at the same time, and then on top of that, his inheritable ability is giving machines that he's digivolving into during the opponent's turn the reboot ability. So again, this just pairs up with a lot of our other abilities, trying to make a very powerful Machinedramon stack. So we already, based on what I showed you, can make him have plus 2000 DP during the opponent's turn, making him 13k, on top of the fact that he could have blocker, on top of the fact that he could have reboot. So we already have lots of different ways to make him a very strong Digimon to be playing around with. Next, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Metal Numemon. So Metal Numemon is another really good new classic collection card for the deck to be playing around with. He has the same native ability as Andromon and as Metal Tyrannomon, so just that digging for Machinedramon while filling up our trash for him. And then the inheritable ability, which we care about the most, is a when attacking ability where if this Digimon has machine in its type, then we could delete one of our opponent's Digimon with a play cost of 5 or less. So it's just potentially allowing us to delete some of the opponent's Digimon when we're trying to aggress with our Machinedramon, which we also could build very aggressive stacks, and Metal Numemon is supporting a more aggressive stack that's adding some control elements to him. Next, I'm going to be running one copy of Megadramon. So this is the starter deck version of Megadramon, and this Megadramon is basically doing almost the exact same thing as the Andromon, where we're really using him just because his inheritable ability just gives whatever he's digivolving into the blocker ability. This isn't super useful because we already have the blocker ability, but it's really nice to have for when we don't see Andromon to ensure that we always will have Machinedramon at least to try to be a blocker. Next, I'm going to be running one copy of Megadramon. So Megadramon is another very good inheritable for Machinedramon to be playing around with if we're trying to go for a more aggressive Machinedramon. So this card is really good because it synergizes with black, because on the field it's also treated as a black Digimon, so we could digivolve up into it, but we don't necessarily care about that because half the time we're just going to be throwing him underneath Machinedramon in his deck due to his own ability, which I'll get to in a moment. But what this card is doing is it has a nice inheritable ability for Machinedramon, making him even more aggressive, where during your turn this Digimon gets plus 2000 DP, so it's supporting that more aggressive side of what Machinedramon can do, and it allows us to build even more aggressive Machinedramon stacks. Next, I'm going to be running two copies of Megadramon. So this is the classic collection version of Megadramon, and this Megadramon is really good because of, well, just everything this card is doing. It's, again, supporting a more aggressive Machinedramon stack and more aggressive possibilities that we could do with him, just because his inheritable ability states that during your turn, while this Digimon has Machine in its type, then this Digimon gains Security Tech +1. So again, it's acting similar to Volcanomon, where we're just trying to give him extra instances of Security Tech Plus to allow him to be as aggressive as we possibly can with him, so that way we don't necessarily have to take the slow chip approach, and we actually have some punch to him. Then on top of that, what's making this card really good is that he also has an on-play ability, so if we just need to hard slam him to get into Machinedramon relatively efficiently and easily, then we have that available play line open to us as well, because he allows us to delete up to 2 of the opponent's Digimon with 3000 DP or less, so it's a good way to try to clear off the opponent's rookies if they're just leaving their rookies on the field, and he could delete them. Then on top of all of that, he could Digivolve off of red or black. Even though he's not going to be counting himself as a black Digimon, unlike his other incarnation, he's still just a very good card that has lots of good synergy with the deck to use. And then the last ultimate of the deck is going to be one copy of MetalGreymon. So this is the classic collection MetalGreymon, and, well, it's just another really good card to be interacting with the Machinedramon deck because of everything this card is doing. So similar to the classic collection Megadramon, he does Digivolve off of red and black, so it allows us to use him relatively easily with the deck without any loss of consistency, on top of the fact that we could just pitch him into the trash to try to use for Machinedramon's ability as well. Then he also has a when attacking ability native to him. If we actually do just want to stop and start attacking and being aggressive with this Digimon, we have that playline open to us also, because his when attacking ability states that when this Digimon attacks a player, then we get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with 4000 DP or less. So again, just another solid removal type of ability to try to deal with the opponent's low-level Digimon. And then on top of that, what we're really using him in the deck for is his inheritable ability, where during your turn, while this Digimon has Machine or Dragonkin in its type, then it gains the Piercing ability. So this just is the cap on what Machinedramon can do on having lots of different keywords. So we could give him Blocker, Reboot, Security Attack +1, Piercing, and plus DP on either the offensive side or defensive side. Then there's just a lot of other combinations that we could do, so we can make him more aggressive by trying to stack multiple instances of Security Attack Plus, thanks to Volcanomon and Megadramon, and now we have Piercing and Megadramon to also increase the DP, so there's just a lot of flexibility in our level 5s on how we could build our Machinedramon stacks based on what we get and how long the game goes. Next, on to the level 6s, I'm going to be running one copy of Gundramon. So Gundramon isn't that bad of a card for this deck to run, even though you do want to prioritize running Machinedramon, just because Gundramon is also a level 6 machine-type Digimon, so he still has some interactions with the deck, and he's still also helping the deck flow and function, because he is also a blocker, so we could use him with a slew of our other keywords to give him Reboot, to give him the ability when he's attacking to delete the opponent's Digimon, we could give him Security Tech +1, we could increase his DP during the opponent's turn, so there's still just a lot that we could do with with the fact that he is a machine, and on top of that, he also has a nice when digivolving ability, where we get to reveal the top 5 cards of our deck. Then we get to use one option that has a memory cost of 7 among them for free. So the fact that we could potentially use our options for free is really good, or at worst, if we don't use an option, then we get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with a play cost of 4 or less. So at worst, he's still going to be deleting a Digimon and fueling our trash for Machinedramon to make our Machinedramon as powerful as we possibly can in various different ways that we have to play him. And then the last level 6 of the deck is going to be 4 copies of the main man himself, Machinedramon. So this Machinedramon is actually really powerful and really annoying for the opponent to deal with because of, well, just everything this card can do. So the first big thing to note is he could evo off of red and black, so that's kind of why we also can run the red cards in our deck because, well, he could just naturally digivolve on top of those, allowing us to easily use them. And then on top of that, he has 3 very powerful abilities of his own. So he has an on-play ability, where we get to place up to 5 red or black level 5 Digimon with Cyborg in its types with different numbers and names from our hand or trash to the bottom of this card's Digivolution source to gain 1 memory for each card. So that's just a lot to take in, but basically the ideal way to play it is we're just going to hard slam him onto the field, then shove 5 different cyborgs into his inheritable sources, so that way he could be as powerful as he possibly can, with gaining the memory back for each, so that way he's actually going to be costing 7 instead of 12. So that's really important, because we have a level 6 that we could play relatively efficiently. But in the early stages of the game, we're going to be digivolving him, and even if we're just digivolving him, he's still pretty good because of his 2 other abilities. So he has an all turns ability, where this Digimon's DP can't be reduced. So this is a ability that specifically hates on yellow, and, well, it's really good because it makes yellow actually not be able to interact with him because their form of removal is DP reduction. So this just shuts out yellow's control type aspects, making Machinedramon just that much more powerful to be playing against yellow, and there's no real downside to running him because of his other inheritable ability that could help deal with other situations as well. Because of its other ability, where during all turns, when this Digimon would be deleted, you may trash 2 level 5 Digimon cards from this Digimon's Digivolution source instead. So that's also really good because even if the opponent were to be able to delete him, if he has just enough level 5s in his inheritables, then he could prevent the deletion. Yes, he is losing some of the abilities that we're trying to give him, but we still get to keep a level 6 on the field, and they're going to have to try to figure out how to remove him multiple times in order to, well, actually remove him. So not only does yellow not work, but purple, black, and red also have the potential for it to not work as well. Yes, he does still have the weaknesses of being bounced and returned to the bottom of the deck, and then on top of that, he does have the weakness of being attacked into as an easy way to try to pick off the inheritable sources if he doesn't have the reboot or blocker abilities. And then on top of that, he also could be de-digivolved, so he still has his weaknesses. It's just going to be very annoying for a lot of colors to deal with him still as a whole, just because we can make him a very strong Digimon. Next, on to the level 7s, and the last mega of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Omnimon Zwart. So Omnimon Zwart is just an absolutely fantastic card for this deck to be playing with because of all of its synergies with the deck. So its Wind Digivolving ability is really good because we get to trash the top 3 cards of our deck, so that way we could fill up our trash for Machinedramon, and then we get to place up to 2 black or purple Digimon that have a play cost of 8 or less from our trash for free. So that's already really powerful, filling up our board as quickly and efficiently as we possibly can with various different Digimon. And then on top of that, he also has a when attacking ability of his own, where we get to return 1 level 6 Digimon from this Digimon's Digivolution source to our hand to delete one of the opponent's unsuspended Digimon with a play cost of 12 or less. So this is really good because it allows us to add our Machinedramon, so that way we could then hard play our Machinedramon and then use him again and again. So that's the real purpose of what this card is doing, but the fact that we also get to spawn a wide board and have various different ways to use our cards is just making this a really good level 7 for the deck to use. Next, on to the options, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Gewaltschwarmer. So Gewaltschwarmer is a really powerful card to be playing with, and it's kind of an easy include because we're also running Gundramon, so off of Gundramon's ability, we could potentially use this card for free. So what this card is doing is it'll allow us to delete all of Digimon with a play cost of 7 or less. So it's almost like a mini board nuke that could delete a lot of level 5 and lower Digimon, which is really good. So that way, if the opponent is just spawning too many Digimon for us to handle, this could help reset the field in our favor. And then on top of that, it has the security ability of adding itself to our hand, so that way we could use it when we need it to, and we don't care about the fact that it's interacting with 3 Musketeers, because the only 3 Musketeer we're playing is Gundramon, and he's just natively black, on top of the deck just being a main black deck. Next, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Iron Fisted Onslaught as basically just the Gaia Force of the deck. So this is a really powerful option card because it has the main ability to delete all of the opponent's Digimon with the highest play cost. So there are going to be lots of Digimon that Gewaltschwarmer can't delete, so hopefully Iron Fisted Onslaught could shore up some of those weaknesses and delete those Digimon. And then if they have multiple Digimon with the same play cost, then it'll just delete all of those Digimon, making it just a very powerful removal ability to be playing around with as a whole, with a nice security ability of activating its main, so this card is always going to be a threat against the opponent. And then the last option of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Ultimate Connection. So Ultimate Connection is an absolutely insane card for this deck to be playing around with because, well, it's a black 1-costed option that's basically a raw value or engine card. So what this card is doing is it has the main ability where we get to trash out one of our level 5 Digimon with Cyborg in its trait from our hand to gain 2 memory and draw a card. So this card is basically like netting us 1 memory and drawing us a card, which is really, really good, while fueling up our trash for Machinedramon, allowing us to try to play our Machinedramon as efficiently as we possibly can, and dig through our deck and to get into a more advantageous board state. And then lastly, onto the Tamers, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Izzy and Joe. So Izzy and Joe is an absolutely fantastic duo tamer for us to be playing around with. If you wanted to use a memory fixing tamer in this slot instead, you very much could. It's an easy flex spot just to use for a black tamer. But I do like what Izzy and Joe is doing, just because the ability to gain 2 memory for the opponent having 2 or more Digimon in play is just really easy. And then he also has a really good supporting ability where during the opponent's turn, when one of our black Digimon is deleted, we get to suspend this tamer to draw a card. Just allows us to try to dig through our deck as quickly and efficiently as we possibly can. So it's just a good generic tamer to use as a whole. And then the last tamer of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Analog Youth. So Analog Youth is an absolutely insane tamer for this deck to be playing with because, well, it's a mega-based deck and it's a high-level-based deck. So its on-play ability states that we get to reveal the top 3 cards of our deck and then add 1 Digimon among them into our hand and trash the rest. So it's helping us dig through our deck to try to find our Machinedramons and the cards that we need, and then trashing the rest isn't bad because, well, Machinedramon's just going to pull them out of the trash anyway. And then on top of that, it has a really powerful Alt-Turns ability where when one of your level 5 or higher Digimon with Digivolution sources is deleted, then we get to suspend this tamer and we get to gain 1 memory and hatch 1 Digi-Egg into an empty space in our raising area. So this is really good because when our Machinedramon eventually does get deleted, then we basically get to turbo out another egg, which is really, really powerful. And gaining that 1 memory is also really powerful because during our turn, it could help extend some of our plays, and during the opponent's turn, well, it's taking away 1 of their memory. So it's just a very powerful card for us to be playing with overall. And then on top of all of that, we still have multiple things that we could do to spice up the deck and change it up to make it your own. So I'm just going to be going over these quite briefly just because, well, the main deck was long enough because of all of the different tech and tools that it naturally is already playing. So you could run Chumon to stop the opponent from gaining memory. You could play Commandramon because he is a cyborg. That's a low-level blocker, so that way you have some early game defense. You could play Sunarizamon because him just sitting passively on the field is really good because he could give Machinedramon piercing, or he could give him security tech +1, depending on what our stack is looking like, so he's never a bad card to use. Then if you wanted to dip into blue and play more of a Mega Zoo type style, then you do have blue eggs and the Jamming Vmon to use just to try to help aggress early on, draw you some extra cards, and be that blue card so that way you have access to blue options. Then if you wanted to, you could also consider running Gigadramon as just another really good blocker for the deck that also is interacting with your high-level Digimon, so that way you could try to draw more cards with them, which is always a good thing, trying to be as consistent as you possibly can. Then we do have other cyborgs that you could be playing around with that are also level 5. So MetalGreymon is absolutely fantastic as an example of this, just because he has reboot himself, so he could be an aggressive card in his own right, on top of the fact that he gives security tech +1 for the Digimon having reboot, so it's not necessarily hard to give our Digimon reboot because we have multiple different ways to give Machinedramon reboot. Then if you wanted to run some extra defense, then you could think about playing Craniamon, just because he has blocker as a high level Digimon. That'll also prevent the opponent from deleting your blockers, so it makes it even harder for them to delete Machinedramon. Then Black as a whole just has a butt ton of level 7s that you have access to. The highlight of it is going to be Omnimon Zwart Defeat and Chaosmon as 2 other level 7s you could use, but you could also use Alter S and Millenniumon as well if you feel like it. And then if you're running Alter S or any of the other Omnimons, then you do also have Omnimon X Antibody to think about, just because we're already building a large stack with Machinedramon, and if we're already going into an Omnimon, there's no real reason not to run X Antibody because of his abilities to delete the opponent's Digimon and stall the opponent out. Then as far as some other alternate options you could play Ultimate Flare for some de-digivolving and deleting a lot of the opponent's low-level Digimon, acting as one of the better removal cards that Black has access to. And then you could even play Black Memory Boost if you want some more consistency type tools, because checking the top 4 for Black Digimon is really good, and then the delay ability to gain 2 memory at a later turn is also really good, making you have the ability to make one big power play. Then the reward for playing blue options is going to be in the form of Wolfclaw, just because we could start separating our stacks and doing various other things with what Machinedramon can do. So Wolfclaw is a pretty fun card to be playing around with. And then Black has some really good tamers that you could take advantage of, so going in a more defensive direction, you could run Black Tai, just because he's a memory fixing tamer that'll DP boost your Black Digimon during the opponent's turn, which is really good. Then you also have the starter deck Black Tai, just because he interacts with blockers, and if you're going for a more defensive type build, then he could allow your blockers to unsuspend themselves for suspending this tamer, so that's really good to just make your blockers block multiple times. But if you just want a generic Black Tamer to run, then Izzy is a really good memory-fixing Black Tamer, because he could help rig the top cards of our deck so we know what we're going to be milling or trashing from the top off of certain abilities of ours, on top of the fact that he'll just always hard set us to 3, and he has the possibility of gaining us some memory for checking all Black Digimon, making him one of the more efficient memory tamers. But this just goes to show you that Machinedramon is looking to be a very powerful Digimon to be playing around with, and there is just a lot of flexible options to play around with him, just because of all of his support that he got from all of the level 5 cyborgs with really good inheritable abilities to toolbox to make whatever Machinedramons you want to make. But the whole objective and idea of how the deck wants to be played is in the early stages of the game, you're just going to be traditionally Digivolving to try to get into a good setup to start hard playing your Machinedramons. If you need to Digivolve into a Machinedramon just to try to continue the flow of the game, that's not necessarily the worst thing in the world to do, because he's still going to have some abilities based on your low-level Digimon and what your stack is looking like, and you could even customize your mid to low-level Digimon to support that traditional evolution style a little bit better. But at the end of the day, once you're in a position where you're just going to hard play Machinedramon after Machinedramon, it's going to be very hard for the opponent to deal with them, just because of how sticky of a Digimon Machinedramon is. So this is just my interpretation of what a Machinedramon deck is going to be looking like come the Classic Collection, and I do think it is the best deck to come out of the Classic Collection, and one of the more fun decks to come out of the Classic Collection, because it's playing Digimon a little bit differently than what you normally would be used to. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.